We just went through an anti-meta build, and today we're going to be bringing you through not necessarily an update, but a very different version with a little bit of sprinkles of different kind of uses of anti-meta cards that I believe would be very helpful in an anti-meta decks build. So we are going to be bringing you another anti-meta deck profile for you today. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Let's get started with the first two cards. In this one, like we said in the last video, we are going to be expanding on this with another piece that we are going to be talking about, and just hear me out, wait this one out. Of course, we are starting off with two copies of Cyber Dragon over here, and it's good by itself, and I know that you might be assuming that you know anything about anti-meta. You'd be talking about, okay, well, you have things like Royal Oppression, you'll have things like Fossil Dyna, and that would kind of go against it. I have never really noticed these to be dead draws. Every once in a while, yeah, they could, but hear me out on why they're included, okay? We're going to be talking about them as we continue on with the video. Continuing on, we have two copies, Doom Caliber Knight. For the Edison format, this is an excellent option at just stopping opponents in their tracks. I don't mind this at all, and I understand that it's kind of like a one-for-one, but this is a format where you play an anti-meta where you have a lot of continuous effects, so it's more than likely that your opponent will have to be the one to get rid of this, and they will have to drop something and play around this. So I like this, especially for a level 4, 1900 kind of beat stick type card. I think this is very helpful, to be honest with you. Let's continue on to three copies of Thunder King Ryo. This is one of these staples, one of the few staples of an anti-meta build that we're going to get in. It shuts down adding things from their deck to their hand. It stops any special summon. It starts straight away at 1900. It's a nice easy summon, and this is one of the must-haves, and I am all for always three copies of Thunder King Ryo. Let's continue on to one copy of Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. I think this is a very underrated piece. You do any sort of battle damage, you can target two monsters in the graveyard and you can remove them from play. I love this. I love this. Especially, and I know that there are a lot of pieces in this build that kind of play against any sort of special summon, any sort of graveyard activity, but I still think that this could be very low-key helpful. And that's why it's like just one copy, because every once in a while, depending on what you have available to you right now, maybe this one could be a little bit helpful. Plus, it's another monster that we haven't, typically for these types of builds, the monsters are a little bit difficult to come about, but continuing on to another staple, you must have three copies of King Tiger Wangu. Stopping anything with 1400 or less is amazing, forcing people to have to be put in a situation where if they really want something, they're going to be having to flip summon, and that's even gambling the idea that they don't get their set card destroyed by the time that they are available having that flip summon. Plus, you might get around any sort of like normal summon effect, anything like that. This is an excellent card, and it is no question in my mind that you need three copies of this. Let's continue on again. Another staple, Fossil Dyna. You can nuke a field. You can stop any special summon. The only problem with this was, but we fixed this with a lot of traps, is that it has 1200 and 1300. It could be better, but the effect is totally worth it. It's a continuous effect, and this is a must-have. This stops people dead in their tracks, plus you can just all of a sudden you can place it down, then nuke a field if you're in a bad position. Continuing on, three copies, Banisher the Radiance. We do not need any graveyard activity here, or at least very little. I think off the top of my head, we have one piece in this deck where you actually can access it from the graveyard, but this just puts a stop to so many things, man. Anything that gets sent to the graveyard gets banished instead. It is just, it's a must-have. It's a must-have in a build like this. It forces so many decks to have to just like get rid of that immediately. Continuing on, one copy, Neospatian Grandmal. Every once in a while, you'll run into something that's a little bit difficult to get rid of, and this is just an easy option for it. You just bounce both of them back. Either that, or if you really want to, you can set it down, but I typically don't do that. I typically just keep this on hand until like there's something that I kind of deem necessary for it to get rid of, but even then, you can just keep using it over and over again. I'm sure we've all been in those scenarios. One copy, Plague Spreader Zombie. This just brings up the idea and the possibilities for any synchro summons. There is, and I know it kind of goes against like any graveyard work. I know we have like things that like Banisher the Radiance goes against it, Fossil Dyna goes against it, Royal Oppression goes against it. That's something that we're going to be talking about, but it's one piece. I'm willing to take the idea of this being a dead draw in order to have the capabilities that it has. So I like Plague Spreader Zombie on this. I think it is the perfect tuner edition. Let's continue on. One copy, Heavy Storm, staple, self-explanatory. Continuing on, another copy, Creature Swap. I think this is one of the most underrated spells in the entire history of the game. No matter what it is, you can make it work too with your traps, whether it's just taking a lot for your opponent to summon one kind of monster that they want. Just to take it and keep it, Do you know how much time people spend, especially in this type of format, to get like one giant beat stick out? I think this is an excellent card. And to force your opponent to give that to you, I like this a lot, man. I like this a lot. And I've been a big fan of this. And my entire life, my main has been Frog Monarch. And I never not have a creature swap available. I think this is an excellent and underrated card. Okay, continuing on. Giant Trunade, better version of Heavy Storm in my opinion, especially for a build that's so reliant on back rows. I like this idea because I can just use it and I don't have to wait to be like, do I want to sacrifice one of mine? Nah, we're just going to put them all back, and then at the end of the turn, you can just put them all back down. Continuing on, one copy, Book of Mood. It can come in handy sometimes. I think this is a little bit of a staple in the format, and I'd be okay if like we really wanted something to cut. I would consider cutting Book of Moon, but at the end of the day, I did end up keeping it in this deck. I don't remember how many we have in total. It's something around like 43, 44. We don't need 40 right on. I've never really been a big fan of that. Continuing on, if you happen to watch the last video, we talked about this in general. United We Stand. We have an issue with things like Fossil Dyna with King Tiger, where the only thing that's holding them back is their low attack points, and this is so underrated for bringing it up. I don't mind the equip spells, man. I don't mind it. There are a lot of times, too, where you have maybe just one piece on the field, you're relying on one continuous effect, and it's even harder to get rid of them when you have multiple monsters on the field, plus you can get 800 attack and defense for each of them. I think this is great. And the attack points stack up and up and up and up very quickly when you're talking about United We Stand. I, in my other build, have 2 copies of this, but for this particular build, we have 1 copy of it because we are so trap reliant on this build, and we're going to get into those because that's a little bit unique. But we also have a unique spell, Mage Power, a little bit more of the same because we have so many back rows available for us. And again, we're going to be getting into that. This is a little bit more of the same with United We Stand. It's just, it gives you that extra option. I would never want to combine them both unless you like really want to risk it on one. If you have like anything like Solemn in the back row, you need a Dark Bribe in the back row just to be extra safe. I usually use this on 2 separate pieces, having 2 separate continuous effects, things like a Banisher or a Fossil Dyna, something along those lines, or a King Tiger. Then you are pretty set as long as you have a pretty good back row. Let's continue on over to Necro Valley, the only field spell that we are playing. It stops all activity in the graveyard. In the Edison format, unlike if we're talking about something like Goat format, this is a very graveyard reliant format where pretty well every deck wants to get into the graveyard, move things around, special summon them. So we have Banisher the Radiance plus Necro Valley to really shut things down, and we will have a little bit of protection for that. Let's continue on to the traps, and we are pretty heavily reliant on traps this time around. Radiant Mirror Force, 1 copy of. I would ideally like to have Mirror Force, but in the format that we're in right now, it is limited. So Radiant Mirror Force is the next best option. Continuing with that, we have 3 copies of Draining Shield. I will explain this a little bit more with the rest of the trap setup that we have because I found this extremely helpful, not only to just have a one-off where you can stop one attack, but in order to gain a bunch of life points with the negation. I think this is incredibly helpful for this particular build, but don't worry because we have a lot more of your typical setup for blocking attacks. Continuing on, a staple in pretty well every single deck build that I've ever had, 2 copies of Starlight Road. This is one of my favorite pieces, and I think it's a personal staple of mine, man. Even if this build, if you have Fossil Dyna, if you have anything that stops you from getting Stardust out there, you still have the negation in here, and you need that because you are very reliant on building your board, whether that's the back row, whether that is everything under the sun from your field spell all the way to your monsters with equip spells. 2 copies of this is very necessary, in my opinion, to stop anything that kind of mass explodes, okay? 1 copy, Mirror Force, like I said, ideally we would have 2, but Radiant Mirror Force will have to do with this being limited. 2 copies, Dimensional Prison. Quick, easy, banish monster. Very nice, very easy. Let's continue on to 2 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. Very handy in order to just bounce a monster back. You don't need to destroy. You don't need to risk anything like that can stop you from like destroying or anything along those lines. So Compulsory Evacuation Device is one of my favorite cards. And now let's continue on. Hear me out on this one. I have found this, and believe me, I have play tested this until the end of time, okay? I have play tested this build for a very long time. And this is one of the most underrated cards in the Edison format. Scrap Iron Scarecrow. The amount of times that this has kind of saved the day and an opponent did not have something to blow up the back row, and not only that, they would have to sit down and they would have to focus on blowing up the back row before they can actually do anything else. Plus, while you're building your field. This offers so much protection, and I love it for this format particularly. You block an attack, you set it back. You can do that if you happen to have 2, which has happened quite a bit, to be honest with you, twice per turn. I think it is an incredibly, incredibly underrated card, and this I am never going to remove from my anti-meta builds. 1 copy. I'm sorry. I actually only have 1 copy, but I messed up over here. Wall of Revealing Light. Draining Shield helps us a ton, and I have found too that this kind of stops people in their tracks because typically in the Edison format you would need to pay something like 3,000. I don't mind that. Plus, with all the Draining Shields that we have, and eventually we're going to work Solomon Judgment into the play too, we're going to be playing a build where we are paying a lot of life points, gaining a lot back, and this kind of, assuming that they don't have anything on hand like an MST or anything like that, this is an incredibly underrated card as well. This, Scrap Iron Scarecrow, it takes care of a lot, man. So apologies for that. There is only 1 copy of Wall of Revealing Light. Now, we talked about the Cyber Dragon before. We have DNA Surgery. In the extra deck, we have Chimera Tech Fortress. This just brings up an extra option. First of all, it's very helpful to just make everything machines. It's very, very helpful to do that against a variety of builds. So you have that. I do not believe this to really be too much of a dead draw because eventually you're going to run into those Cyber Dragons and eventually you're going to be able to use them. It's like, okay, you have 1 card, you have 5 cards out there. Give me them, they're all mine. Boom, now you have a giant beat stick. Just to have this in the back pocket is incredible to me. Plus, like I said, you're fighting something like Blackwing. Hey, they're all machines now. Something along those lines, okay? Let's continue on to 2 copies. Royal Oppression, it is an anti-meta build, and this is very self-explanatory. This is another thing where we need Draining Shield for as well. I have played around with the idea of reducing this to 1, but I do like the copies at 2. It's just the extra special summoning stuff, because if you can stop the special summons, you're pretty set, to be honest with you. You're pretty set, especially with the rest of the build that we have over here. I like it. I like it at 2. You can stop anything that you want. The quicker that we can stop any special summons, the better. 1 copy, Solemn Judgment, just to have that spell speed 3 counter to pretty well anything. It is one of my favorite cards. It is in pretty well every single build that I ever have. It is perfect. I don't care that I have to pay half my life. I'm good with it. Same with Dark Bribe. I have this in a ton of builds as well. You know what? You could use something that just stops traps, okay? I'll hear you out on that. But I like the idea, and I don't care that you give your opponent a +1. I don't care, but I mean, is it really a +1? I don't care about that. I have the ability to stop a spell or a trap. That's good with me. A spell speed 3 again, sometimes you just need to stop it. Let's continue on to the extra deck. You have some pretty typical cards over here. 3 copies of Chimera Tech, Fortress Dragon, Stardust Dragon. There's a lot over here. Like, you don't use Synchros too much in this build over here, but the only option that you have is Plague Spreader, and with a long, very, very situational creature swap, so we do have something covering every single level over here. If I can make an 8, my go-to is Thought Ruler Archfiend again, because we do need to gain a little bit of life points in this build, but it's pretty basic build for the extra deck over there, and I wouldn't mind just mixing and matching a bunch of other stuff with that too. But the conversation does not have to stop right there about any sort of anti-meta build, because we do have another different, more modern version of an anti-meta build for the Edison format. You can check that out right here. I'd love to have you over there. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Take care.